Okay, while Rachel is trying to get in, I think we can start. Thank you for joining us today. This is the Washington Outsiders event, part of a series focused on peace building and human rights. Unfortunately, today's occasion uh, has roots in a horrific tragedy that took place Friday as a result of the landmine crisis that Azerbaijan is facing following the conclusion of the Second Karabakh War. A number of journalists and local officials were traveling through the liberated territories to Karabakh, and unfortunately, the bus struck a landmine with two journalists were killed, and one local official and several people were wounded, injured. And today we've come together to discuss the not only the actual event in question, but how to overcome this crisis, how to ensure the safety and security of Azerbaijanis. We will look at the geopolitical dimension of the situation, at the political actions, diplomatic and legal options for holding Armenia accountable or ensuring its cooperation in landmine removal, which has been a major obstacle up until this point. With us today, we have an exciting panel of international guests. I will be also, if necessary, translating from into Russian in the beginning because Anastasia, who's the head of the, who's the deputy of the chair of the Russian community in Azerbaijan. She will be going first. She needs to leave early. We also have just entering now here Rachel Abraham. She's an Israeli journalist, and she will address the issue of landmines from her perspective, because that's an issue that Israel has had to deal with practically, particularly with the crisis in the Golan Heights. We have Dr. Patrick Walsh, a political analyst and historian, who will talk to us a bit about the historical background of how all of this came to pass. We have Lieutenant Colonel IChalid Alaram, who will discuss the geopolitical reality, a perspective as a head of a think tank in Pakistan, and discuss the options for addressing this issue. We also and we also have us today Mr. Qaiser Nawab, who has experience as a young Pakistani dealing with the Pakistanis living in Azerbaijan about the relationship aspect of Pakistani and Azerbaijani communities. We'll talk to us again about the impact of this current crisis on others from the outside, discuss what opportunities for engagement address some possibilities for moving forward. And last but not least is Dr. Ali Askerov, who is a professor of specializing in peace building at the University of Manitoba, who will give us his own perspective as an expert in the field. How can we reach a place where the discussions about landmines are no longer on the table and we're talking about integrating focuses and moving forward and having stable relationships between Azerbaijan, Armenia, and other countries who are with interest in the focuses. I will start with Anastasia. If she можете начинать, я знаю, вам нужно уходить. Так что...
На русском, на английском, на какой вам?
Вам удобно на русском, на по-английски как будет лучше.
Yeah, no problem. I can speak English as well. So thank you very much, Irina. Thank you, dear colleagues. Let me first, once again, on behalf of myself and on behalf of Russian Community of Azerbaijan, express a condolence to the families of those brave people, two journalists who unfortunately died because of this. I will say it's a terrorism on behalf of the Armenian state and Armenian government, because despite of the trilateral statement which was signed in November, as Irina, you rightly mentioned, unfortunately, Armenian government refused to provide the maps, which will foster the process of the mining and definitely will help with the restoration processes. There are two options why Armenia doesn't do it and how we can understand this. The first is they think that Azerbaijan will spend a lot of time for the mining, and definitely it will prolong the time while our former IDPs can come back to the own lands, to own homes. And the second issue is probably they want to get something in return, because when Azerbaijan started to speak about why Armenia does not provide the maps, if there is any special reason they have to do it, they're talking that first of all, Azerbaijan has to give the freedom of so-called prisoners of war. By saying this, they mean the people who were captured already after the signing of trilateral statement, and those people were illegally presented on the Azerbaijani territories. It's in that they came here, and we detected that they wanted to put the mines to some particular territories, which was liberated by the Azerbaijani government. So it's in that they really want to, they committed the crime. They committed the crime and they cannot be called as a prisoners of wars. They came to our territories with a special aim, with a special goal to put the mines and to have some victims from the civilians or from the military staff who will come to those territories. That's why those people cannot be called as prisoners of war. But Armenia tries to present it like this to the international community, using it as an argument to not to provide the maps. So up to now, we can say that since the time of when the trilateral statement was signed, we have approximately 30 victims of the mines, and more than 100 people were injured, including the civilians and military staff. It's really bad, because we want the international community to pay the particular attention to this issue. As, for example, today we saw the news in the Facebook, the founder, director of the Special Military Training Center, let me tell you exactly, it's called Tigran Metz, and Colonel of the Armenian Armed Forces, Horyun Kumashian. They published the video where they say, where they reveal the facts of the mining of Kalbajar and Lachin regions of Azerbaijan in the beginning of 19th. So they openly saying that yes, they did that. They are not going to provide any kind of landmines maps. And they also say that during the visit of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Lavrov to Yerevan, and during the discussion with the Armenian government, the Russian government also asked Yerevan to provide these maps. And these people are saying, despite the fact that Armenian government probably may decide to ask for the maps to be provided, they're not going to do this. So they're openly saying that the situation is completely unresolvable without the assistance of the third side. They are not going to provide any kind of information, and they just think that this is how it should be. So they also mentioned the Kalbajar region of Azerbaijan, where there is the largest gold mine, saying that having this mines on the territories, it will not allow for the Azerbaijani government to use any kind of gold mine on the liberated territories. So this is a fact which is not being said by the Azerbaijani government. It's also being published officially on the social media, and the international community can see this. So it's really important that the international community should prevent the activity of the Armenian government to do what they're doing right now. And the death of two brave journalists can be as a start of a big campaign to attract the international community and particular institutes based not only in Russia, but also in other co-chairs of the OECD Minsk Group countries, as since the time of the resolution of Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, The experts, and particular experts from the United States and from other countries, are saying that OSCE Minsk group should stay, should be kept, and should play an important role in the further process. So this is the case. How the OSCE Minsk group also can be involved? Because if there is no special attention being paid from the international community and from the co-chairs of the OSCE Minsk group, then the peaceful agreement will never be signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. And except of saying that Azerbaijan and Armenia should sit at the table and think about the status or think about any kind of negotiation and etc., first of all, they have to call the Armenian government to do everything what was signed in the trilateral statement. That's first. And secondly, that the Armenian government should do all possible and impossible things to provide the maps. Azerbaijan will not return back to the war. Azerbaijan will not accept any kind of, let's say, refuses from the Armenian government. And if they don't do it, it will just prolong the process. It will put the Armenian government on the same stage with the terroristic organizations. Today it's two journalists, then tomorrow it can be diplomats, it can be the representative of international organizations who is also quite often going to the liberated territories. And if something happened with them, then who will be responsible for this? Then that's why I think that we should attract as much as possible attention from the international structures, from the attention from the lawyers, attention from the governments, especially those who signed the specific conventions, and pursue them to push the Armenian government to come to the this special discussion and provide the maps, and then we can think more about possible ways of cooperation. That's what I think.
Thank you so much for your insight. One more question before I know you have to run. Chingiz Askerov actually made a statement today commenting on the European Court for Human Rights and its joinder of the applications that Azerbaijan has submitted. Can you comment about the legal proceedings and the direction where it's taking?
I can speak on behalf of myself as a political expert. I'm not, let's say, a lawyer to speak more. I hope my colleagues can speak more on this issue. But this is the procedure that the governments who have the membership in these particular organizations, they have specific responsibilities. Responsibilities which push them to follow the special procedure and to answer the requirements which can be sent and asked from the higher committee, from the higher aspect. And Azerbaijan, as a member, also have specific rights to send the note, to send the document to the upper instances and ask them to help and to, let's say, push the Armenian government to follow the documents which was signed. The first document is that Armenia also feels the responsibility before this court. And the second, that the Armenian government has the responsibility because of signing the trilateral statement. That's why there are two sides from the legal side. I mean, how Armenia should behave and the right of Azerbaijani government to bring those who committed that crime before the court. And we have to call it as a crime. It's nothing else. Almost 6 or 7 months almost passed since the time of signing the trilateral statement, and still we don't see the result when we speak about the providence of the landmines map. That's why the international community and the court also, where Azerbaijanis applied the statement, has obligations to push the Armenian government to do what they have to do. That's how I can explain from the expert side, but not as a lawyer.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And if you need to run out, that's good. Otherwise, we'll continue with the guests, and after everyone's comments, we'll continue with questions and answers. Now we are going to move to Dr. Walsh, and he will give us a little bit of a historical context. And as a political analyst, he can also explain some of the disturbing complications in the context of this case. Very shortly before this horrible tragedy took place, Azerbaijan took into custody a number of Armenians in the area who were claiming to be doing engineering work, but they appear to be acting in some other capacity. Is there a connection here? How do we interpret this latest chain of events, and what's the background? Why have landmines and have become such a tool against civilians in by Armenia?
Good evening, everybody, and I'd like to add my condolences to the families of those who were killed and wounded on June the 4th. So I wish to add my condolences to those people. Anyway, since its defeat, Armenia has refused to provide information about the areas it mined in the liberated regions. And thereby it's deliberately endangered the lives of people. And this can only be seen as a cynical attempt to impede post-conflict reconstruction and the much needed humanitarian efforts in the liberated territories, as well as the safe return of 750,000 displaced persons to their homes and their lands. So Protocol 2 of the Convention on Certain Conventional Weapons, which is an annex in the Geneva Convention, regulates the use of mines. It prohibits or restricts the use of landmines, booby traps, and other explosive devices. Breaking these rules is considered a war crime under the Geneva Convention. So under the general rules of the protocol, using mines to cause unnecessary suffering or injury, that's Article 3.3, is illegal. Directing those weapons against civilians or civilian objects, Article 3.7, is also illegitimate, as is using these weapons indiscriminately, that's Article 3.8. Parties to any conflict which use mines must remove them following the end of active hostilities, that's Article 3.2 and 10. And they must take all feasible precautions to protect civilians from their effects, Article 3.10. States must also maintain records on the locations of such weapons, Article 9. So under the specific rules of the protocol, anti-personnel mines must be equipped with self-destruction and self-deactivation mechanisms unless they are placed within a perimeter marked area by military personnel and cordoned off to civilians. They must be cleared before an area is abandoned. Among general obligations, states must take all appropriate steps, including law and other measures, to prevent and suppress violations of the protocol on territory under its jurisdiction or control. That's Article 14. Okay, so that's the basis of the law in the Geneva Convention. But the problem with this protocol is who enforces it. There are actually no international mechanisms available for obliging mine layers to cooperate in the decommissioning of the mines they lay. It has always been left with the victim states to bear the human and financial costs of clearing up the dirty work of the perpetrators. Azerbaijan found out in the course of 3 decades that while international law might be on its side, finding anyone interested in applying it was a wholly different problem. That's not to say international law is irrelevant. It is very useful in driving home a moral case internationally. When Azerbaijan won on the battlefield last year, no one was inclined to support Armenia in view of its breaches of international law regarding Karabakh. So international law is a useful, but only as an adjunct to military force and politics, it seems. The main reason why Armenia must hand over the maps containing details of its mining operations is because in terms of conflict resolution, Armenia's attitude to its mines is a litmus test of its commitment to peace building. Mines are a particularly harmful weapon to peace and reconciliation. They effectively continue the war for years after its conclusion. Most weapons are decommissioned from a conflict once an armistice is signed. However, by killing people continually, years after the conflict's formal end, landmines maintain bitterness and hamper the building of good relations among different communities. Azerbaijanis who cannot return to their homes and work their land again who see their children killed by Armenian mines will not be enthusiastic about building good relations with their neighbors. The international community could certainly help by pressurizing Armenia into handing over the maps of their minefields. Why does the US Congress not attach the condition to Armenia for the receipt of further financial aid that they hand over these maps? Why does the EU not do likewise? Russia certainly has the power to influence the Armenian government on this matter. This is not a punishment for Armenia. It will represent a valuable contribution to peace and reconciliation and the building of peace in the Southern Caucasus. That surely is in the interest of all, Armenian and Azerbaijani. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And of course, we'll be back with a lot of questions following everyone's comments. But now I'm moving to Lieutenant Colonel IChalid Alaram to hear his perspective on the geopolitical dimensions of this crisis. Can the international community do anything to affect the situation? What kind of pressure or other methods can be used to achieve the needed ends here, which is to ensure that Azerbaijan is provided with everything necessary to remove these landmines, and that there is no more additional subversive activity, which is increasingly appears to be at least a possibility.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. And yes, the second Karabakh war was the turning point for the whole in the regional geopolitical situation, as we have seen that Azerbaijan liberated its towns and more than 300 settlements from the Armenian occupation. However, the post-war repercussions and the Armenian attitude ever since this war is finished, the Armenians have shown a very pathetic attitude, and it is very unfortunate that the international community is not taking any account of the whatever Armenia has done in those areas since last 29 years. In April 2021, the second week of April, I happened to go and visit all the liberated areas, and it was the scenes which I saw over there were very horrible. There is practically what to talk of any human. There was even no animal over there, and all the buildings of that area on most of the areas were razed to ground. So this shows that what Armenia had been doing there since last 29 years. And yes, I practically saw myself the landmines which are laid over there in almost every part, and there was a very single small track in which we were able to go and see those areas. And these landmines are not new. They have been laying these landmines since last 24 years, and so it has been, this area has been referred as a carpet of landmines. The worst affected areas are near Tatar, Agdaman, and districts of Fuzuli. Experts from Azerbaijan National Agency for Mine Action have estimated that it can take up to more than 10 years to determine all the landmines and to get rid of these landmines. So over here, I would just like to call upon the international community, the United Nations. We have, unfortunately, we have seen very little role of international community ever since this war started. Although countries like my country, Pakistan, and Turkey, and many other friends of Azerbaijan, many countries which are friends of Azerbaijan, they totally supported Azerbaijan during this war. And over here, for the consumption of the audience, I would like to tell you that Pakistan is probably the only country in the world which does not recognize Armenia as a state. We have never recognized Armenia in United Nations, and we do not recognize Armenia as a state. But Unfortunately, we have seen very little role of European Union in the crisis. Although once I visited the liberated areas, I saw the British mining company over there. There was another company from Scotland which was over there. The Russians were over there. The Russian sappers were over there for demining, and the Turkish land mining people were also there. The special mine detection and clearance team was over there. But we have seen very little role of USA. We have seen very little role of the Middle East. We have seen we have seen practically no role of the big powers in this crisis. So what I foresee that Armenia will continue doing these actions in days to come, unless there is a proper resolution passed in United Nations. There is a proper system of accountability of the Armenian government and the Armenian military. We have seen Armenia is also passing through a very troubled time in which their military chief tried to remove the government, and although they are passing through a very bad patch, but at the same time they are acting very, very irresponsible. These things are likely to continue, and I personally believe that unless there is an international body which forces Armenia to produce the landmines, the Armenia will not produce them. The United Nations Security Council must call upon Armenia, and they can also recommend certain sanctions on Armenia if they do not give the landmine record, because the reconstruction process has already started in the liberated areas, and this reconstruction process cannot continue till the time the Armenian provides the landmine map. As we have seen that 2 innocent journalists lost their life only because of this reason, that they were in that area and they stepped on those landmines. And we can see as in Baku, I happened to visit the very recent military museum, which is made in the center of Baku, in which the Azerbaijan government has displayed all those military items which the Armenian forces has left behind. And we can see tanks, and we can see all the latest weaponry which the Armenian forces left behind, and they ran away. So mining, it is not only mining which is a threat. There is a threat to Azerbaijani people from the Armenian military. They have been using rocket launchers. They have been using long range and short range missiles also, as we saw once they attacked the city of Gabala during the 44 days war. So the threat would remain unless the international community and the United Nations and the European Union and all those who claim to be friends of Armenia, they should sit with Armenia, and they should pour some sense in their heads that they have to leave the area, and they have to hand over the remaining Karabakh region to Azerbaijan. So as far as our country is concerned, from Pakistan side, we have been standing with our Azerbaijani brothers and sisters, and especially my sympathies for the families of those journalists. And it was very heartening to see once I visited Azerbaijan in April, that all over Baku and all over Azerbaijan, the flags of Pakistan and Turkey were flying side by side with the Azerbaijani flags. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your comments, and this was a very insightful look at the situation. It's really unfortunate that a humanitarian crisis of that sort is not attracting a lot more attention and noise the international community can launch campaigns and speak out when they're interested in an issue, but for something like that, for some reason, there is a largely silence. And we are going to move on to Rachel, who comes from a country that has direct experience with landmines as well. In particular, the landmine issue in Golan Heights, where anyone traveling can see similar signs warning against mines even many years after these territories had been formally cleared. Rachel, can you please give us your perspective on this situation? What can be learned? What can be done? How has Israel dealt with a similar perspective? And also a little bit about the humanitarian aspects of the situation, the human rights. What is being said, what's being discussed, and what kind of cooperation politically can be possible with regards to bringing attention to what's going on. Rachel? Rachel?
You disconnected me for a second, so there was a technical problem. First of all, I would like to start out by expressing my condolences for the two journalists who were killed by landmines. Obviously, landmines are a major human rights violation. They indiscriminately target civilians. They they could target children playing in the snow, children playing soccer, also journalists, people working, going about their daily business. You can step on one and then you can set off a series of landmines. Now, Israel had a problem with landmines dating back to the 1950s and 1960s. We had landmines not just in the Golan Heights, but in the Arava Valley, around the Jordan River, and in the West Bank. However, in the 1990s, the state of Israel determined that they serve no strategic value to the state of Israel. And in 2009, Jerry White, an American survivor of a landmine blast in Israel, started to lead a campaign for demining efforts in Israel. In 2010, an 11-year-old boy named Daniel Yuval lost his leg while walking in the snow in the Golan Heights and petitioned the government to change this. And then that led in 2012 to the National Mine Action Authority started to demine Israel after in 2011, the Knesset passed the Minefield Clearance Act. And since 2012, Israel's been working to demine the area. Now, they're basically they have developed some technologies that can be useful. For instance, 4M Analytics developed a technology where you can determine which areas of vegetation have mines and which one doesn't. Usually areas with mine have richer vegetation, pits, and other signs that show, and they developed a technology where they could make it easier to detect landmines. Israeli officials said it could take 100 years and at least $1 billion to clear all the landmines out of Israel. However, this company feels they could do it in 5 years for 80 billion, but unfortunately, they ran into investment problems. So because they ran into investment problems, they switched to infrastructure. But this company known as 4M Analytics, if Azerbaijan approached them with a deal, I'm sure would be willing to get back into the landmine mission. Now, Israel did do a campaign between 2017 and 2020 to clear landmines. And to 2017, there were 9,000 hectares of landmines in Israel. There's also another technology that Israel developed with special bacteria that can detect landmines. It's called fluorescent E. coli bacteria. And you use this in order to make the landmines more visible. I believe that both of these Israeli technologies could be very useful for Azerbaijan. These technologies should be utilized, I think, because it would make it easier to clear the landmines and decrease the amount of time that would take to clear the landmines. I think there should be cooperation between Israel and Azerbaijan in this regard. Already, Israel has volunteered, has some companies to help the reconstruction process in Nagorno-Karabakh. There's, I believe, an Israeli dairy farm already in Nagorno-Karabakh, and I'm sure that there's plenty of room for cooperation between Israel and Azerbaijan in as far as demining efforts. I can tell you that Ayub Kara, who was with the Likud party, who served as the Israel satellite and cyber minister, and communications, he told me personally that he was very sad about what happened to the Azerbaijani journalist, and that he thinks that Armenia should hand over the landmine map so that no longer, he's even willing to help Armenia with this. Of course, the Israeli ambassador also condemned. What this new government will do is another question. They have many left-wing parties that are generally more favorable towards the Armenians, like Meretz, like Blue and White, like Yesh Atid. These parties are more pro-Armenian. So it's going to be very interesting with the new government to see if they were as committed to Azerbaijan as the previous government was. I can tell you that Benjamin Netanyahu was a good friend of Azerbaijan, but it looks like he's not going to be prime minister. It looks like Naftali Bennett is. Naftali Bennett, I don't think, is an enemy of Azerbaijan, but some of the parties in his coalition are. They want to pass Armenian genocide bill, so I would be doubtful that they will be more favorable towards Azerbaijan. So things could be changing in Israel soon. But the good news is I'm not so convinced this government will last. How long can Bennett, Lieberman, and Sar sit together with Meretz and Ram? It just doesn't seem like these people are going to last. They got together to replace Netanyahu, but I don't think that they have enough in common to last more than a few months.
Rachel?
Other countries are worse than the left wing in the Israel political map. France is a major ally of Armenia to the level that they even recognize Artsakh in their parliament. All the Biden, but he does have to say about supposedly who helped plant landmines. He does have something to say about getting them released. This is not a very good sign. He talks about the border incident, but he doesn't have anything to say about landmines or this. And it's just, I think Azerbaijan is heading into some very dark arena. And they're like Israel. They're like a lone wolf fighting against a bunch of naive governments that enable the aggressor. But I think that Azerbaijan should learn from the great words of the British Prime Minister, Winston Churchill, that appeaser is one who feeds a crocodile, hoping it will feed him last. Just because the world is changing in a bad direction for Azerbaijan doesn't mean you need to give in and give what they want. So you should stand your ground, you should be proud, and you should stand up to them and tell them you need to force Armenia to give the landmine maps. This is an unnegotiable issue because human lives are like stake. And as the Talmud said, whoever destroys a life, it is as if he destroyed the world entire. And whoever saves a life, it is as they say, they live entire. By getting rid of those mines, you're saving lives. By Armenia not handing over the landmine map, they are killing people on a daily basis. These two journalists will not be the last victims, and that's why we need to stand up to them and force them to hand over the maps in the story.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And the comments that you brought in about the Israeli companies and the new methodologies of mine detection sound very interesting. I hope that is something that can be brought to light, and in general, the conversation on innovations in technology and how it can be used to save lives is a separate discussion, very much worth having. Uh, Now, of course, I'll have lots of questions for you, especially about the, Israeli politics and the Armenian genocide recognition bill. But now I'd like to give floor to Qaiser, who can discuss the community aspect of it, his experience in the community relations between Pakistani and Azerbaijani, and his thoughts about not only this incident specifically, but in general, how these tensions have affected the region, and what can be done to uh, bring the discussion from this erasure of the trilateral peace agreement to back on track. Qaiser?
Yeah, thank you, Miss Irina, for this handsome kind of introduction and giving me an opportunity to speak with such great leaders from different countries, especially from my countries, Colonel Khalid, who spread, awareness about the Pakistan role regarding this whole situation, not today, but since beginning. So let me a bit introduce. I'm Qaiser, and currently I'm leading a delegation of 20 influential youth from Pakistan, Azerbaijan, and Canada to the Nasser Fellowship for International Leadership in Cairo, Egypt. This fellowship brought 100 influential leaders from Africa, Asia, and Latin America under the theme of South-South cooperation by the Ministry of Youth and Culture of the Arab Republic of Egypt. When we came to know about the sad incident of the mine blast on Friday, 4th June, in Nagorno-Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, we raised the issue here in the fellowship main conference, which allowed us to bring the attention of the leaders from various countries. The blast and loss of the journalists was condemned by global youth leaders here in this fellowship. When I visited the United Nations headquarters in Geneva in past, I saw the big sculpture of the chair with a broken leg in front of the main entrance of the United Nations headquarters in Geneva, which shows the awareness regarding mines uh, placed in different worlds. In 2005, United Nations General Assembly declared 4th April as International Day for Mine Awareness and Assistance in Mine Action. Implanted mines by Armenia constitute a serious threat to the safety, health, and lives of the civilian population, or an impediment to social and economic development in liberated lands. Armenia's refusal to provide minefield maps disturbs peace and trust in the region. According to the international humanitarian law, Armenia grossly violates the Azerbaijani civilian rights. The planted mines also delay the process of restoring the liberated territories, becoming a major hurdle in achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Previous day, we celebrated the International Environmental Day, where the environment is polluted by harmful substances contained in the mines and unexploded ordnance by Armenia. This is also a continuation of the policy of ethnic cleansing and genocide against the Azerbaijani population. We, the global youth, particularly Pakistani youth, voices a strong stance and express our serious concern over this issue. Armenia, in a blatant violation of its international obligations, now refuses to release information on location of minefields. This is a severe breach of international humanitarian law. We urge the international community to voice their concern at the human cost of Armenians' landmines. We, the global youth, reiterate an appeal and call on the international community not to turn a blind eye to Armenia's violations of its international obligations, including its deliberated policy of planting mines, impeding the return of internally displaced persons to their homelands, and refusing to release information on the location of landmines. We urge Armenia to uphold its international legal obligations and its moral duty to protect life. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this, and I think you're lending a very interesting perspective. And I'll get back to the question on youth involvement in all of this very soon. But for now, I'd like to ask Dr. Askerov to comment on the peace building process and actually to pose a little bit of a provocative question. Some experts believe that Armenia has no maps to give, that they have not been keeping track of where they planted many of them, especially as the forces were fleeing at the end of the Second Karabakh War, or they were simply incompetent in the entire process, and when they were planting them, they forgot where their location and don't have anything to share. I'd be curious whether that is something that's realistic, and in that case, what if anything, can be done.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I appreciate all the talks. You have covered the issue pretty well. I'm gonna try to be brief. Galtung, one of the founding fathers of the field of peace and conflict studies, said that conflict may be divided into 3 phases: before violence, during violence, and after violence. So technically speaking, the war is over and we should be at the 3rd state, but unfortunately it seems we are not in the 3rd state, we are still in the 2nd state, which is during the violence, because violence has not ceased. That's why we got to really identify the situation correctly to offer any kind of solutions to the problems. Border problems are serious, but they're technical issue, so they can easily be handled and resolved. So if they can't be, it means that there are some forces that really try to not to let it to get resolved so easily. So why those issues can't be resolved at this point? First of all, Armenia's opposition is not ready for that, and Armenia's government is not ready for that as well, because it feels a pressure from the side of opposition and others, probably other forces. For instance, some try to come to the power in Armenia by using this opportunity. So they don't want to really the conflict be truly resolved. So obviously Armenia is encouraged by some foreign actors as well, including France. France is the main one that acts like Armenia's best friend. But just somebody mentioned, and some of you mentioned, France is a co-chair of the Minsk group of the OSCE, which has been trying to resolve this conflict for decades. France has been a mediator. A mediator should be impartial and neutral. So France is not acting as a neutral actor and trying to help Armenia. As a matter of fact, by doing so, France exacerbates the situation, does not help with the resolution process. So what are the other issues? There are some other issues as well. The war was over in 9th of November. Say the November 10th agreement was signed by 3 states, Russia, Azerbaijan, Armenia. And it's a legal document. It's a binding document. Some people claim that it is not because it is not ratified in the parliaments of these countries. But you know, under international law, this kind of document may be signed by the heads of governments and states in these types of situations, and that's a binding document. But yet the most important problem is that Armenia is not willing to comply with the document, with some important parts of the document. Of course, the document has a lot of gray areas that should be clarified, or another agreement maybe is needed to give some details about certain parts of the document, but still that's the document that we have right now. And first of all, Armenia still has troops in Nagorno-Karabakh. According to that document, Armenia was supposed to withdraw all the troops from Nagorno-Karabakh. So if the war is over, if ceasefire is in place, if the sides have signed the document, if they have agreed on the main issues to resolve, so they're going to comply with this, right? If the troops still are there, so it means that's a big problem. Second, the communication corridor between Azerbaijan and its autonomous republic, Nakhchivan, is not supported by Armenia anymore. At least they have made some statements in this regard, which is a big problem, as a matter of fact. And the third and the main issue, Russia is there and acting like a state. So Russia's troops entered Nagorno-Karabakh alone by itself, and Russia has been one of the mediators or members of the Minsk group since its inception. And Russia is acting like a state in Nagorno-Karabakh right now. It's not good because Russia is not state. Russia's troops are peace-building troops, right? They're peacekeeping troops, maybe. But letting Russia by itself to be in Nagorno-Karabakh is not good at all. Because Russia, in fact, enjoys more power in Nagorno-Karabakh than Azerbaijan and Armenia. And Russia acts the way it wants. And Russia is not interested in truly resolving this conflict because Russia was one of the actors that made this conflict in 1990s. Russia was not impartial, helped Armenia in 1990s to occupy Azerbaijani lands. Russia did not let Azerbaijan to get its lands back until last year. And Russia is now there as the main actor. So that's a great problem for the sides, for both Armenia and Azerbaijan. But see, Armenia tries to intimidate Azerbaijani citizens. This is an important point to make here by those landmines. That's one of the main reasons. Armenia does not want Azerbaijani citizens feel comfortable to move back to their liberated lands. And Azerbaijani press has written a lot which proves that those landmines that killed those people recently were new landmines, not old landmines, because that route was used by people tens of times just prior to that explosion, and nothing happened. So they were either new or Armenia used a new type of weapon to blow up that bus. Most likely, Armenia used mine throwers or even small rockets. So that's another point that should be really clarified. But will this peace agreement hold? That's the main issue, main question. Will it really hold? It seems the Armenian political elite is calling for revenge. And since they're going to have elections, probably we're going to find a clear answer to that question soon after the election. But another important point is that Azerbaijan has officially declared its dedication to the integration of its Armenian citizens into the political, economic, and social life of the country. So Azerbaijan is trying to have its Armenian population back that had prior to the war in, before 1991. So Azerbaijan gonna have its Armenian citizens back or ready to have them back and grant them full rights, all the constitutional rights that other Azerbaijani citizens have. But that's a big problem because in Azerbaijani lands, in Nagorno-Karabakh, there are Armenians that were not and are not Azerbaijani citizens. It's very hard to identify them because Russia and Armenia, they are not willing to do so. But that's important. Azerbaijan should have its Armenian citizens back, and Azerbaijan ready to have them back and grant them all rights, political, economic, social, all types of rights, to be elected, to elect, etc. But Russia and Armenia should be willing to let Azerbaijan to do that. And the world community, Europe, France should support Azerbaijan in this regard. Azerbaijan has no obligations in front of those who are not Azerbaijan citizens, and France should understand this, and everybody else should understand this, and they should comply with the rights of Azerbaijan, help Azerbaijan to restore its all types of rights for its all citizens, including Armenians. Armenia's policies are against this, because if this happens, Armenia will lose the support for its policies, and it can also face some problems to justify its policies. But Armenia should understand, if this is missed, a similar historical opportunity may not emerge again. So this particular historical opportunity should be used really nicely. I'm sorry to hear that the would-be new governments of Israel won't support Azerbaijan as much as Benjamin Netanyahu's government. Azerbaijan has always been really a good country and good society, good community where all types of religions enjoyed all types of freedoms. That's why Azerbaijan's Russian and Jewish communities love Azerbaijan. As a matter of fact, Azerbaijan's Armenian community loves Azerbaijan. I personally have met so many Armenians that moved from Baku and they miss Baku and they're ready to go back and they love Baku, love Azerbaijan. Why? Because people are tolerant. Government has good policies, etc. Azerbaijan should enjoy support from others. But it seems the international community either does not all about this, some Europe, I mean, of course, including France, or they are not willing to resolve the problems the way it should be resolved. Just to mention, Azerbaijan lands have been occupied, were occupied by a foreign aggressor, by Armenia. Azerbaijan did not occupy anybody's lands. And this fact was recognized by the resolutions of the United Nations and by the world political community. Then Azerbaijan has restored the justice right over there. Azerbaijan did not do anything, any aggressive acts against anybody else. Regarding the border, you know, Azerbaijan and Armenia were part of the Soviet Union, and they never had physical demarcation of border in between. But the border was delimited. There are maps, etc., and Russian archives, etc., that can be used to demark those borders. Now, it's so easy, so that's a technical issue, but some people don't want to really resolve that problem because they don't want the conflict get resolved really soon. I'll stop here, but if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I definitely have a lot of questions for everyone, and I'm going to actually start by not only joining everyone in expressing my condolences to the families of the journalists who killed, but also there was a third, unfortunately, victim, a local official who also died. So my condolences also go out to this person's family, and there were several people wounded who I hope have a complete and speedy recovery. Unfortunately, Dr. Walsh had to leave. He was in a building that was closed early due to COVID restrictions. But the issue with landmines is not new. It's an old Soviet method, and some of the landmines actually are traced back to the Soviet Union. And unfortunately, we are seeing a comeback of this methodology, and we're seeing a resurgence of geopolitical clashes that are allowing local interests to take on a very lethal turn. Dr. Askerov just touched on the issue of Russia's increasing involvement in the area. I'd like to turn to Lieutenant Colonel IChalid Alaram for comments, and actually from his perspective, does he see that there is a potential for a clash of interests between Russia in the long term, between Turkey that is increasingly growing its commercial, economic relationship with Azerbaijan, and if so, how to avoid that clash? Is it at all avoidable? That's to Lieutenant Colonel IChalid Alaram. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So my question about the larger geopolitical context of this situation, we're seeing Russia resurging its towards its interests in the region, and not simply in any trade level, but we're seeing a potential for a military involvement and incitement. Do you believe that there is a potential for clash between Russia in the long term, and potentially an attempt to draw in Turkey into some sort of a military standoff in the future, given that Turkey is providing valuable assistance in terms of landmine removal, commercial and economic activity, and is growing as an investor in the Caucasus?
No, actually, we must see that Russia is back again in Azerbaijan and in this region of 30 years. Practically, the Russian boots are on ground, and they are looking after now the ceasefire. Since this agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia was arbitrated by Russians, and yes, Turkey played their role in it. And instead, that ideally, United Nations forces should have been deployed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But since this did not happen, as I said, it was very unfortunate on the part of the international community and the United Nations for not playing their due role at the due time. Because once this war, Second Karabakh war started, mysteriously, United Nations absolutely kept quiet. So then the mediation role was played by Russia, and now the Russians are on ground in Azerbaijan and Armenia, and they are looking after the border. It is very unlikely that there will be any clash between Russians and Turkish, because Turkey and Russia again enjoy very cordial relationships. Turkey is involved in the reconstruction process and in demining process in a big way in Azerbaijan. The Turkish companies have come in Azerbaijan for the reconstruction process. As far the Russians are also there for the reconstruction process. On this particular issue, Turkey and Russia are on one page, and it is unlikely that they will cause any problem. But yes, some countries of the European Union, very small countries, as Luxembourg, try to threaten Azerbaijan. Luxembourg is a very, very small country. I think it is even smaller than Baku city, but they gave a statement against Azerbaijan during this war, and European Union practically kept quiet on this complete issue. So yes, in days to come, Azerbaijan has to do a lot of diplomatic efforts. They have to organize many big conferences all over the world. Azerbaijani diaspora, which is all over the world, like you people are sitting in various countries and talking, and your friends are talking like us. So we have to tell international community that what kind of situation can develop in times to come. So what I foresee in days to come, that Armenia may try to get help from some European countries. They may try to, because they have lost a war. So any country which loses a war, for face saving, they try to divert attention from one way to another way. So there is likelihood that Armenia may try to provoke some kind of retaliatory attacks in some other parts of the Karabakh region. They may try to resort to defame Azerbaijan on the treatment of prisoners of war, because there were many Armenian soldiers which were caught by the Azerbaijani forces. So they may try to make this as an issue that Azerbaijan forces are mistreating their prisoners of war and may try to divert attention. Over here, let me tell you a very interesting thing. Maybe our audience may not know it. This was actually told to us by the president of Azerbaijan once I met him in April this year in Baku. So he told us that the sister of the Armenian defense minister during the war, even, she is living in Azerbaijan. She is settled in Baku, and even during the wartime, all the protection and all the help was provided by the Azerbaijan government to the sister of the defense minister of Armenia, who is living in Azerbaijan. So over here, you can see this very interesting humanitarian grounds in which the war is happening with one country, and the sister of the defense minister of that country, who is attacking Azerbaijan, is living in Baku, and is being provided with all sorts of help and with also of the sorts of the government support. But as I say, that all these things, all these stories must come up. International community must know what Azerbaijan is doing, and whatever things have been happening in the nagorno-karabakh region should be brought in light to the international community. And just for your information, again, I would refer back to the president of Azerbaijan. He very recently announced that now there is no Nagorno-Karabakh. It is only Karabakh. So they have renamed the region as only Karabakh, and the Azerbaijan government has requested to all their friends all over the world to call it as only Karabakh region.
Thank you so much. And the story that you mentioned is incredible, because this is not the first time I've heard something like that, although it is the first time I've heard it regarding specifically Azerbaijan. But hearing individuals from countries that are inciting this, a very aggressive approach, and then enjoying the boons from the countries that they're attacking, this is not something that should be ignored, and that sort of hypocrisy, absolutely agree with you, should be publicized. But I wanted to quickly follow up on a point you made earlier about Luxembourg. Now, France understandably has a huge Armenian diaspora, which affects its local interests and politics, but Luxembourg is a very small country. Why is it so interested in this issue at all? Is it some French bloc alignment, or is there some underlying financial interest that that evades the eye here? I just wanted to follow up.
Okay, you want me to answer?
Yes. I want to
Okay. Two reasons why Luxembourg was actually, once this war started, Armenia tried their best to they went to European Union headquarters in Brussels, and they tried their best to get a statement against Azerbaijan through the European Union headquarters in Brussels. But the European Union, as I said, they were probably sleeping, or they were probably more worried on the COVID. So they kept their eyes closed on this. I would use the word kept their eyes closed in this war, and they neither listened to Armenia, neither they saw towards this side that this war is happening, and it is such a grave situation. But yes, Luxembourg has got a lot of Armenian diaspora also. They have got lots of their investments in Armenia. The Armenians are investing in Luxembourg, although it is a very small place, but yet it is an independent country. It has a vote in United Nations. So they were the probably first ones to condemn Azerbaijan, and it was a very strange statement which came out of Luxembourg about Azerbaijan and about this war, because another interesting situation is that during this 44 days war, no other country except for Luxembourg condemned Azerbaijan. Many countries of the world, including Pakistan, Turkey, many countries of the Asian region, the Euro-Asian region, even China, they condemned whatever Armenia was doing. They condemned the rocket attacks by Armenia, but no country except for Luxembourg condemned or talked about any kind of putting the situation to grave consequences to Azerbaijan. The Azerbaijan government, especially I must refer to the famous interview of your president to BBC, which made headlines all over the world for a very, very long time, in which he very clearly told to the world through BBC that where is the international community sleeping? Nobody was seeing towards it. As they say that success has many fathers. So once Azerbaijan won the war and once everything got settled, so then most of the international community countries, they woke up and then they started giving congratulatory statements to Azerbaijan. So they were, this 44 days war, I would say, has left many lessons for each one of us. It showed how the Azerbaijani nation was fought with resilience. The war is never fought by the armies, it is fought by the nations. Since I have been working with Azerbaijani diaspora committee, and I've also worked with many think tanks and many institutions in Azerbaijan. So it was very heartening to see that how the Azerbaijani people all over the world supported their government, how very recently there was on 24th of April, probably, there was a marathon for collecting money for the martyrs. And there were, I was part of that, and we were quite happy to see that in just 2 days, on 24th and 25th of April, a lot of money was collected for the war martyrs. And once I was there after the war in April, third week, I was there in Azerbaijan. I met with the families of martyrs and their families, their fathers, their daughters, their wives. Everybody was very high spirits, and it was very heartening to see. And especially, I would like to mention here the leadership of your president. It was commendable to see, and still, if you see his videos, every day he's going to the liberated areas. Every day he's meeting with the families of martyrs. So Azerbaijani nation has shown to the world that even a very small nation and a small community can make a difference in the world. So my appreciation for the Azerbaijani diaspora also, which is all over the world and which played a very, very positive role in all this.
Thank you so much for your insights. And now I wanted to get back to Rachel and ask her more about the Israeli political aspect and the move towards a more pro-Armenian approach within certain parties. You mentioned specifically blue and white, which sounds a little bit surprising. What are their interests? Why is there this openness to this Armenian perspective, particularly after Pashinyan's comments about Israel's alleged responsibility for the quote-unquote genocide of Armenians during the Second Karabakh War? Where is this sympathy coming from?
One of the problems with a lot of left-wing parties is that they tend to promote policies that are, in a sense, self-hatred. You know, they feel like because of the Jewish people survived the Holocaust, that we can't say no to any other people, that they claims they suffered a Holocaust, that we can't not recognize their suffering. Of course, we all know that the reality with the Armenian case is that they suffered a great tragedy. There were massacres, but there was no direct order to exterminate all Armenians. So it was. It was not genocide according to the definition, where it needs to be pre-planned, premeditated, intent to destroy a nation in whole or part. The intent was not to destroy the Armenians. The intent was to support them because there was certain Armenian groups that were doing a rebellion at the time. This is the truth. But, you know, most Israelis don't know that. They just know it's bad PR to come out to say no to this, and they just want to do the politically correct thing for the Armenians who live in the Armenian quarter of Jerusalem, which is to recognize their suffering as genocide, to make them happy and content, because they like to make all the minorities happy and content. That's part of their left-wing ideology, and they don't really think about how Israel's strategic interest in Azerbaijan, who's a very important for Israel, for anyone who wants to keep an eye on Iran, who could be harmed by that. They don't think about the fact that there's that it's not the 100% truth. It's not like the Holocaust, where anyone who denies it is essentially like really evil. It's a disputed genocide. It's not a cast in stone genocide. It's not like the Rwandan genocide either, where everyone can say what the Hutus did to the Tutsis was for sure genocide. This was a disputed genocide. Some say it was genocide. Some say that it was a case of ethnic cleansing that went south because the whole empire was disintegrating at the time, and they just brutally crushed them because they were in an uprising. In fact, the original terrorist of the modern day terrorists, one of the first separatist terrorist groups was Armenian, the Bakhtaks and the Dashnaks. So, it wasn't like they were just like the Jewish people of Germany who were law-abiding citizens who did nothing and all of a sudden were murdered. No, it was not like that. There were Armenian groups that were rebelling against the Ottomans. But, most Israelis don't know this history, and they are scared, and they don't want to do anything unpolitically correct, especially the ones who are left-wing. The Israelis would be like, on the right, will say, Azerbaijan's important for Israel. We need to support Azerbaijan because we need them for Iran, and the history is not important. If it's true, not important. The ones on the left will be like, how can we ignore genocide? That's their ideology. That's the ideology of Yair Lapid, who, by the way, after a certain period of time, will replace Naftali Bennett as prime minister in the rotation agreement, which Bennett claims he will honor, unlike Netanyahu with Benny Gantz. Actually, we found ourselves in a situation where basically Bennett betrayed his voters, because most of his voters were right-wing people that were basically in the Netanyahu camp, but they were upset with the lockdown policies, the strict lockdowns that Israel did before the vaccine. So many of them supported him for that reason, because he claimed that the lockdowns were unnecessary. So a lot of people voted right-wing, voted for him, but at the end of the day, they did not want him to sit with Meretz. They did not want him to sit with Benny Gantz. They did not want him to sit with Yair Lapid. So I think that the issues will develop when Yair Lapid takes over his rotation as prime minister. Naftali Bennett will rein in some of the worst aspects of the left, but but he can only do it so much. It's not like without causing the coalition to collapse. I think, though, in reality, there's a good chance in a couple months it will just collapse, because how long can Lieberman sit with Meretz and Ram? How long can Bennett sit? All it will basically take is some words related to it, and all of a sudden the coalition will fall apart. That's how narrow the coalition is so narrow that even if a few Yamina MKs say, listen, we don't want to sit with these people, and decide to vote for Bibi, that it could change. And then this government won't be formed. Only if all the parties follow their leader. We need to be watching in the next week to see what exactly happens, whether Bibi manages to snatch a few votes. We'll see what actually happens.
Yeah, if Rachel is done, I just wanted to add a couple of points?
Please, and I would love this to be like a discussion, and everyone, if anyone wants to comment on what other speakers have said, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, thank you so much. As a matter of fact, Rachel has provided a lot of insight, evidence, etc., to this to answer this question. That's great. Just wanted to add a couple. Okay, we speak about so-called Armenian genocide, but that's something, an issue that history should handle, not politics, first of all. If people really do some research, basic research, they're going to see that since 1878, the Berlin Conference, Russia and some European countries, including France and Great Britain, they started to use Armenian card against the Ottoman Empire. And it was Armenians who started to kill Ottoman or Turkish citizens. This is so clear in history books, guys. And Ottoman Empire had no choice but to retaliate back. This is one. Second, the number of the Turks that were killed by Armenian terrorists, so-called, I would say, that were supported by primarily Russian troops, killed about 1 million Turks. And the Armenia that we have today, the Armenian Republic, all those territories were populated by Turks, and I'm one of them. I was deported in 1988, and those guys started to be deported, killed, attacked, first during the Tsarist times in 1905, historical truth. Then in 1918, when the independent Armenian state was established there, and the third wave was just after the World War II in 1947 and ended in 1953. And in 1988, all the Turks or Azerbaijani Turks living in today's Armenia were just ethnically cleansed from Armenia. My family left Armenia at that time. If deportation is a genocide, what is this? Isn't this a genocide? This is one question. Second, parliaments or governments shouldn't decide about this. This is not a political issue. Okay, this should be studied well. You know, in the late 2000s, in 2008 and 9, the Turkish government had a proposal to study, examine, investigate this issue by an international group of historians and scientists. You know, Armenia did not welcome that point, unfortunately. They could just study this issue, examine it once forever and find a solution to that, whether there was a genocide or not. Third, Israel shouldn't forget that throughout the centuries, Ottoman Empire really embraced Jews that were subject to pogroms in different parts of the Europe, including Spain and Russia. They have been so nice to Jewish populations, our brothers and sisters, throughout centuries, you know. And just because the Turkish Republic now and Israel have bad relations should not really have a negative impact on this issue, because governments come and go, but friendships stay forever. And Israel and Turkey are gonna reestablish their good and friendly relations again. I'm pretty sure about that. That's a matter of time. So people, governments and parliaments shouldn't take an act to regret later. They're gonna be patient in this regard as well. I understand Turkey and Israel have some problems, but Azerbaijan and Israel are good friends at this point, at least. Plus, Azerbaijan and Turkey are good friends. There should be some role that Azerbaijan should play in between Turkey and Israel to re-establish good relations. I understand there's a Palestinian issue, etc., but problems should be kept separate from each other. We shouldn't mix them up. That's the point, you know. Thank you.
Irina, I would like to say something. I would like to say that I think that it's, I agree with you, of course, that this should not be a matter for the Israeli government. I'm a Likud party member. I think parties in Israel, this is how they think, and you know that they could theoretically push this if they are given the powers. Now, of course, I'm against it. I believe that the history should be left for the history books, and that we shouldn't politicize this issue. I know Azerbaijan's a good friend of Israel, and I know there are also many Turkish people that are friends of Israel, despite what's going on with Erdogan. I know this. But at the same time, these parties, these are the same people that are willing to work with Mahmoud Abbas, who denies the Holocaust, you know, just because they like to support their enemies, but they'll turn their backs on a friend like Azerbaijan. You know, this is it. So they'll work with the Armenians, who were good friends of Yasser Arafat in Lebanon, but they'll turn their backs on Azerbaijan in order to score some political points. That's the support enemies is the problem.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you so much for your comments. Actually, I wanted to follow up with a quick question. Well, first of all, just to make a point, the important point missing here is whatever the realities of the Ottoman activity during World War I, it had nothing to do with Azerbaijan at all. Azerbaijan is not Turkey. It was never part of the Ottoman Empire. So I'm not entirely sure why any of these issues should be in any way related to Israel's relationship with Azerbaijan at all, regardless of what is finally decided. And I also find it perplexing that for the sake of whatever misguided political correctness, some of these parties are willing to overlook the fact that Pashinyan is, you know, he's an anti-Semite, he's very anti-Israel, and his comments are completely unacceptable in the international context. And certainly the issue of calling the outcome of the Second Karabakh War a genocide in itself is a completely preposterous and irresponsible. So so to follow up on to come back from the historical kind of discourse and back to the current events, we are seeing that whatever the interest concerning the past, the very real current humanitarian crisis is being ignored. And I'm almost seeing that the international community is focusing on the discussion of past events in order not to resolve current issues, but to avoid resolving them. We've seen the Biden administration recognize the Armenian genocide, but then they have done absolutely nothing to really bring to the landmark crisis or the current atrocities to the committed by the by Armenian terrorist groups, by Armenian governments, by the separatists in Karabakh. None of that is being discussed as a matter of humanitarian or political concern. And leaving aside the United States for a moment and coming back to Europe, we are seeing another issue. Yes, on the one hand, you have powerful Armenian diasporas essentially directing some of the lobbying influence to push for particular policies in France. But on the other hand, we're seeing that Macron is not popular. He may lose the elections in France. So the question is, what then? You still, it's in the French interest, of course, to have strong relationships with Azerbaijan to benefit from economic integration. And the best way to do that is to participate in humanitarian action, to maintain good relations with the people, and to not be seen as a completely biased party that alienated the people. Do you think that this kind of radical position is influenced by other factors and not just the diaspora? Could it be that France is going closer to Russia, for instance, and seeing for instance, Russia gaining energy influence in Europe, and Nord Stream 2, for instance, has just had US sanctions lifted off of it by the Biden administration? Do you think that's a factor in the way this issue is being treated? And that's to Dr. Askerov.
Yeah, thank you so much. Irina, you have given a real speech. I got lost. What was the actual question. It was more comments than a question.
Well, the question was your opinion whether France is acting solely because of Armenian lobbying pressure. Do you think they're growing closer to Russia with Macron becoming less popular to the point of ignoring seemingly natural interests with Azerbaijan? Is it because of the energy issue in Europe? We are seeing Russia gain traction. We are seeing the Biden administration lift sanctions over the Nord Stream 2, which rather than pushing the Azerbaijan pipeline. Is this economic issue?
You see, France's support for Armenia and France's policies against Azerbaijan are more political than economic, in my view. Of course, there were French companies that were working together with Armenia's companies in the occupied lands of Azerbaijan that were mining gold. Those gold miners were also from France, but Macron has no control to over them, right? To direct them in a particular way, because that's a free market economy and that's a free country and that's a private company, etc. But of course, I don't know how they tax those kind of companies, etc. in France. That's a tax issue, right? How they make money from the French companies that make money overseas, outside, in foreign countries, etc. But that fact was illegal. That's important. Why? Occupied lands, and there's a clear foreign aggression, and your company is going there to gold mine. That's stealing. You know, that's not good. Regarding this energy route, supplying oil and gas, etc., all these are controlled by international multilateral agreements. You know, it's not like that. And Azerbaijan is providing natural gas to most part of Europe, and they need that. And you know, that decreases their dependence on Russia, etc., That's another political issue that should really Azerbaijan get some support from Europe in that regard. It's bad for Azerbaijan itself. That's another story, because whenever your economy is dependent on oil and natural gas, those kind of resources that you sell outside in foreign markets, which is not stable, then you're going to face economic problems if prices don't go down, and you're going to do better if prices go up. And pretty much you are dependent on foreign market. That's bad for us. Plus, it influences the democratic institutions back in the country. That's another story, right? So what's interesting here is that Macron has personal good friendly relations with the Prime Minister of Armenia, right, Pashinyan, and we see the reflection of this in France's foreign policy. Is this acceptable? That's not rational, and it's not just, right? So what the problem is, they should identify the problem well, really, and see what's right, what's wrong. What's the truth? The truth is that Armenia has occupied Azerbaijani lands, and what France wanted to, or wants now, says that, hey, you got to comply with Armenia's wishes. Then why have you been a member of the OSCE Minsk group for decades? Just to perpetuate the status quo in Karabakh, which was in favor of Armenia? It seems so. So that's why, in my eyes, for example, France has lost its legitimacy. You know, France is not a legitimate actor to mediate between Azerbaijan and Armenia. France is not neutral. You see, in mediation or in the resolution of this kind of conflicts, any actor, any third country, or any third actor, not necessarily country, even a physical person, okay, should be neutral, should stay in equidistance between the parties to the conflict. In this case, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, France is not. That's the point. That's why I say France is not a legitimate actor to mediate between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Unfortunately, Russia is not as well, but Russia's troops are there. So, in other words, the conflict has changed its form. We are at stage 2 again with what I mentioned in the early, right, in my speech. I said that there is a pre-violence, during violence, after violence stages. We are not in stage 3. If we are not in stage 3, we cannot really, truly start post-war reconstruction. We got to first resolve the main basic problems related to the issue. One is that parties should truly, sincerely be subject or be bound by what they have signed. If that's not enough as a document, then they gotta get together to add certain details to that document and sign that new one. But now there are so many gray areas in the document, and that gives, those gray areas give some of the parties to manipulate the document the way they want and to get support from their foreign friends the way they want. And this is what Armenia and France are doing right now, which is not good. That's why I say this present status quo or so-called peace is not positive peace. That's negative peace. The fact that violence is not happening every minute, every day, every hour does not necessarily mean that we have the positive peace. It is not a positive peace. Okay, it's negative. That's why violence, the way that we have seen in the past, may erupt anytime if the right conditions for Armenia really come true. If Armenia sees that, yes, the conditions are good now for Armenia to get what it lost, Armenia not going to hesitate from doing that. That's very unfortunate. That's why I'm saying it's the time really to handle the issue in a constructive way, without letting the border issues, et cetera, that are technical to expand. Otherwise, the conflict is going to get enlarged. France is about to become a party to this conflict. I would say it is. It means that the conflict gets enlarged. If France is added as a new actor to this conflict, why not others then? Then it's going to become another type of conflict, right? Then we're going to face a proxy war or something like that, which is not desirable. That's what I'm saying. This is a historical moment. It's a very good historical opportunity that should be used wisely by both countries, by Armenia and Russia, by Armenia and Azerbaijan. But I doubt that that's going to happen, at least because of France and Russia at this point. If France and Russia, for example, including maybe some other small countries, small nations, if they were not in the region, if this were between Armenia and Azerbaijan, they would be better off. Believe me, they would really find a common ground, common language much more easily. Others don't let them because they have their own interests there. That's very bad. Russia has its own interests and France has its own interests. But you see, what's ironic, they have been mediators between Armenia and Azerbaijan for decades. So you see, we have lost decades. They were not sincere. Now we see we have lost decades. But was that priceless for Azerbaijan at least? No, Azerbaijan's population from those 7 surrounding countries, including the Nagorno-Karabakh region of Azerbaijan, they lived about 30 years in desperate conditions, right? In different parts of Azerbaijan. About 700,000 people, that's every 8th person in Azerbaijan was an internally displaced person. About 350,000 people just came from Armenia, Azerbaijanis, including my family. They were an additional load for Azerbaijan. So for decades, so what happened? Has France forgotten about this? This shouldn't be, right? Forgotten. That was the historical reality. So then what's the justice, first of all? Peace is not enough. We got to attain justice. What's just? The just resolution to this problem is the fact that the aggressor should leave the occupied lands and then let the country that has liberated its lands to rebuild its those lands, those cities, devastated villages, etc., and grant its citizens what they deserve, including the Armenian population of Azerbaijan. But it's not the case. That's why I'm not so positive at this point, to be honest with you, about the future of this conflict. We are speaking about details, okay, technical issues, border issues, land mining, etc., etc. But I thought that peace gonna hold if this continues like that. But France should do everything so that the peace holds, you know, because again, this is an opportunity. We gotta break this vicious cycle of violence at this point, right? We gotta really leave that cycle. If we don't at this point, then it's gonna perpetuate itself. Okay, you're gonna get some revenge on the enemy, and the enemy gonna wait until the right historical moment comes, and then the enemy gonna take a revenge on you, and then vice versa, you're gonna perpetuate that. And this is not good for the people of the country. It doesn't promise anything. The region should get truly integrated in political economic terms. Armenia should understand Nagorno-Karabakh is part of Azerbaijan and should be integrated with Azerbaijan. But what is Armenia and Russia doing? Nagorno-Karabakh is getting integrated with Armenia right now. But that was not what initially they have agreed. That's the truth. They gotta object to this. So what's that latching corridor then there? What's the contact line between Azerbaijan and Nagorno-Karabakh? Isn't Nagorno-Karabakh part of Azerbaijan? We were told so, the agreement says so, but there's a contact line. What does it mean? These are really important questions that should be handled, that should be addressed, but probably on a political level.
Yes, but actually with that, I want to go to Qaiser. I know he has to go, but before he does, I wanted to ask him a question. Is there room for non-political, non-government entities in peace building? Because you mentioned bringing in a delegation of youth to Egypt, and this is an international effort. You have Pakistanis, you have Azerbaijanis, you have Canadians learning about each other's issues, and you have Egypt moderate. Now, Egypt recently played a couple of major roles in peace building. It brokered the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel, which is not an easy thing to do. It has been reintegrate. It has been resolving its issues with Turkey. Long process, but there is genuine effort to get those issues resolved. So it has experience. Do you think and growing credibility as a country interested in genuine progress and not necessarily just endless procedures? What's your perspective? What do you think can be done? Do you think Egypt can play a role instead of some of the European countries in some of these issues as a country that is not beholden to these decade-old alliances and concerns and lobbies?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Arina, for this comment. Is raise the question and taking my comments on further elaborating it. The non-governmental organization or non-for-profit organization, particularly those led by the young people, is more sustainable, which is of the truth. And as you see, those non-governmental organization are the youth organization, which was led by Azerbaijani youth. They played in a very active role in the whole liberation process, the war, and the sharing of the real information. For example, the fake information and the fake news actually create a different kind of stories, which actually don't get the attention to the right kind of a conflict. So the non-governmental organization work independently. They can actually bring the real information with the help of young people or other media's outlets as well, and they can't be like behaving on behalf of one government or one special sector. And the reason behind this is because their only interest is to bring peace in the world. So I believe that there is important kind of considerations towards peace by the non-governmental organizations. Regarding Egypt in this Nasser fellowship, I hope that the young people who will go back from this fellowship after completing it must be having some information about the conflict, because most of the people don't have knowledge about the war, and they don't know about this recent conflict, which was indeed one of the international conflict and such a crisis. Probably the world was busy to fighting with the coronavirus, but still I think such kind of a fellowships and the youth gathering, which help each other for networking and sharing such international conflicts. So I believe that Egypt also will play an important role as a Muslim country, and is an emerging country in Africa with having a huge influence in most of the states in smaller or even bigger states in Africa as well. Recently, Egypt played an important role between the Palestinian-Israel conflict as well. So such kind of acts are expected by the Egyptian government as well to raise their voices for, on a merit basis stance towards these kind of a conflict like mines and stuff related.
Thank you so much for that insight. And what has there been a discussion about potential uh, to reach out to young Armenians and basically developing some sort of an effort to overcome the indoctrination, persistent indoctrination, especially from the outside, because there is a difference between Armenians living in Armenia and sometimes fleeing Armenia and recognizing that the governance there has significant issues, and lobbies outside the country that have a great deal of financial impact, but they're also not really part of the fight. They are coming in from the outside. They don't necessarily, they have this ideological and idealist view of the situation, and they're not really, and they have a lot of political influence, but not necessarily a direct stake. None of them are coming back to Armenia, and some of the influence may be destructive rather than constructive towards peace building between the parties that are actually directly affected. So is there any way to kind of get around that? Do you think that there is a potential to bring in some Armenians either separately or as part of the group in the future and kind of start these conversations?
I think such kind of dialogues and seminars or conferences, these are very much effective to bring the real information and to the real facts towards them in the common public. I believe that the human by self and human by nature is a peaceful creature. Even God created human as a special creature in all of the creatures as well. So I think for those who have a common sense, which is really I found very uncommon in Armenians ethnicity and in Armenia even as well. So they can have a better way to decide and to fight for the justice and to get aside for the justice and even become a neutral rather than to be with the aggression or the aggressive thoughts or the terrorist thoughts. So the time will bring, is just we see in a few months, we saw the liberation. It was one of the, a happy news, not only for Azerbaijani, but for those who are a part of aggression from various other places in the world as well, which are under occupation by various, countries. So I think it's a ray of hope for those as well. And those should also learn something from this whole process. And those should also stand with the Republic of Azerbaijan to complete the whole process smoothly, so that the common people and the humans have the basic right to live in their motherland and the places from there we belong, the native places of Karabakh.
Thank you so much, and I really hope that you can update us about this fellowship and about the outcomes and the process and what other initiatives are coming from it in the future. Thank you for joining us. For sure, and you have to.
I might add about that. We actually announced the first Cairo International Workshop on Sustainable Development. This scholarship must be having different themes. For example, previous day we come up with the global dignity, with the dignity, and we had a workshop with the young people that what is dignity and how to maintain a dignity. So there we also discussed the dignity at the conflict places. The dignity of the humans, the dignity of the animals, the dignity of the nature even. So the dignity of even the non-living things as well, and cultures, traditions too, religions too. So I think we will be having much more sessions where we will also raise the issues of particularly my brother country Azerbaijan, and we will be having a session on peace. We themed it Dance for Peace, so where we will be able to get some more views of the young people belonging from various countries about different conflicts, particularly the nagorno-karabakh issue and this mines issue.
Thank you so much. That is great to hear, and I think that sounds like an excellent move. I wanted to thank you all the participants in today's discussion. It was a very hot button issue. There's it comes in the light of a horrific tragedy. I hope that it's going to be the last of its kind. I hope for sure that it doesn't lead to any sort of escalation, and it is not an incident of provocation, but an episode of just a horrible incident from what happened before. And I hope there comes a way to elicit Armenia's cooperation in demanding this issue as a human rights humanitarian issue, and an issue that frankly would be better um, to resolve peacefully and jointly. I hope to see that in the future we'll have many more discussions, but on much better topics about moving the process forward, about rebuilding, reconstruction, integrating the region. And I very much look forward to those. And thanks to everyone who's joined us on this event. This was the Washington Outsider, and stay tuned for upcoming events.
Thank you.